In this last section of Chapter 3, I want to show you two examples of sports that got it right. In other words, the sports that have done well in the promotion of their sport around the globe. Again, going back to this idea of the history of sports, I want to show you a couple of case studies. The first one is FIFA, and the second one is Formula One. And many of you probably follow both of these, or at least FIFA is probably the more popular one that people have heard of. FIFA is the Federation Internationale de Football Association, or FIFA. FIFA was founded in Paris on May 21st in 1904. It was the act that founded the association, was signed by a variety of European sport organizations, which we'll see as we talk about this in a second, was part of its biggest struggle moving forward. It was signed by France and Belgium, Denmark, Netherlands, Spain, Sweden, and Switzerland. So even some of the European countries weren't a part of this original foundation in 1904. FIFA, the most popular event that obviously you hear about, is the World Cup. And the first international matches that were governed by FIFA or overseen by FIFA took place on the continent in Europe and began the beginning of that century. At the time, again, until 1909, FIFA only consisted of European associations. So it was really a football association for Europe. However, they wanted to expand globally and started to add members from overseas. In 1909 and 1910, South Africa was the first non-European team to join. Then Argentina and Chile in 1912. And added from South America and the popularity of football there. And then the United States in 1913. And so one of the things that people always say, at least the argument for U.S. soccer, is that, oh, we are a relatively young program. We haven't played soccer in the United States and FIFA for very long. Well, sure, for 100 years, you could consider in the history in the United States isn't very long. But FIFA was founded in 1904, and we joined less than 10 years after its founding. So we're not that new to the game. But you'll hear that all the time. Oh, we're relatively new, so we're not as good as we could be because we just haven't been doing it as long. In the history of the sport, sure, but as far as FIFA goes, it's not that true. The FIFA Congress in Barcelona in 1928 assigned Uruguay the very first World Cup game to be hosted. The good about it is that it was a financial success, and there was really no major governance issues. So FIFA was able to pull off a tournament that was successful without really any issues. The only problem is that only 4 national teams from Europe participated in 1929. And that was a big problem, partially because of travel. But if you think about it, the foundation in 1904 primarily consisted of European countries. And so some 20 years later, the more popular countries weren't the ones actually at the first World Cup. Today, what we see is FIFA has done a lot of great things in its viewership and expansion globally. The viewership of the FIFA World Cup in 2010 in South Africa was 2.2 billion people watching from their home. That's almost a third of the world's population watched some part of the 2012 World Cup. 3.2 billion people watched the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. It's almost half of the world's population. And for the final match in the 2014 World Cup in Brazil between Argentina and Germany, there were over 1 billion people that watched that game live. And so it's pretty crazy about the ability now in today's technology for people to be able to watch this, the popularity of the sport. And you would probably argue that these numbers are even higher if you start to include those that don't watch the game at home, that might be watching it outside of their home setting. The second case, sport that got it right, is Formula One, and what we would term the world's NASCAR, at least the Americans might say. Others would say that NASCAR is a stepchild of Formula One. But so to speak, Formula One Formula One has evolved as a Grand Prix from European motor racing, and in the 1920s and the 1930s it was formulated. The rules of the World Championship for Formula One, or also known as F1, were developed before World War II, but because of the war, a lot of the racing did not occur, and the Drivers' Championship was not actually formalized until 1947, and the first ran in 1950. And so while in the 20s and 30s it was developed, the first real championship race not until the 1950s after World War II. The non-championship Formula One races were held for many years, but due to the rising cost of the sport, it takes a lot of money to be able to build these race cars, and seeking interest in the late 1980s started to phase out. FIA, or the Fédération Internationale des Automobiles, is known as the FIA, is the governing body or the regulator for Formula One races. Formula One is, like I said, also known as F1, is also known as Grand Prix racing. We have Grand Prix racing in the United States, and in fact, we'll talk about here in just a second. We also have Formula One tracks in the United States. However, it's been most popular in other countries. It is known as the most expensive sport in the world. The budgets for annually for teams of racing is upwards of 100 million US dollars a year. A lot of this is based on, at least the Grand Prix of Formula One, is based on typically 19 races, and you get point systems for these Grand Prix races. So Grand Prix are typically your custom track builds. So it's not your, when you look at NASCAR, a circle where the drivers go left and then another left and then another left all day long. Grand Prix is typically those that have multiple turns left and right. Sometimes you have elevation changes. For example, the Formula One track in Austin, the beginning of the race, they actually have to go uphill and then make a sharp left turn. And so it's typically closed off street circuits as well. You've seen there are some Formula One tracks there in downtown areas or metropolitan areas where races happen on the street. Traditionally, it's been centered in Europe, and that's why it is, because it's the leading market for that. But there's also races that are held in almost every continent in the Americas, Africa, Asia, and Australia. They have had new races in Bahrain, China, Turkey, as also Mexico, India, Russia, South Africa, and now in the United States, Austin, Texas, like I just mentioned, has a Formula One track. And I was there the first weekend of the Formula One track doing some market research, and we're talking to people from all over the world. A lot of people from Mexico drove up to watch the first inaugural race in Austin, and continues to attract a global audience. So Formula One and FIFA are two sports that got it right.